Max, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here, Amy.
As I mentioned in the intro, this is a heavy topic, and I will confess that it even crossed my mind if I should even have this episode included in the Awakening Aphrodite lineup, because the subject matter is deep, it's dark, it's uncomfortable, it's unbelievable. I know, Max, the more I researched you, the more I felt a kindred spirit of that mission, that warrior energy of protecting the innocent. One of my prayers, Max, my whole life has been to have the courage to know the truth. And I would say that even in relationships with boyfriends in high school, like, if you're going to cheat on me or whatever, just tell me the truth. Don't lie to me. I can handle the truth, but I need to trust you. I need to know the truth. And my show, Awakening Aphrodite, is mind, body, spirit, wholeness and integration and health and wellness. We have a lot of truth tellers on this show. It's uncomfortable. It's almost, in this case, evil. It's unbelievable that it can actually be happening. But the good news is, in this day and age, we all know the veil is being lifted across the industries. Pick it, right? People are starting to slowly wake up. We're having a bifurcation. Some people are continuing to ostrich in the sand and some are waking up. But I just wanted to say, make sure that I shared with you, Max, that I feel a kindred connection to you in your mission. I can learn a lot from your courage, that's for sure. I know that you have a drive to speak truth and protect innocence, particularly children. That's my welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Would you like to give us your version of a synopsis of your story?
The reason I started to tell my story a few years ago is because this is also the story of many children today. By me sharing what happened to me, you can't resolve a situation or fix it if you don't know it exists. I am a survivor of satanic ritual abuse, torture, and child sex trafficking. And I was trafficked primarily out of the Vatican. In the Vatican, they have subterranean levels way down. And I was taken there many times, and I witnessed babies and children being sacrificed there. I know this sounds like some kind of movie, but this is really happening. And it's happening in underground military bases and underground tunnels and places all over the world. What I saw is they pay homage to Lucifer. So there's the front is a Catholic church that was about Jesus and God, but really it isn't. They would bring little children in and brutalize them in the worst, most unimaginable ways to trigger this massive terror. And then they would take a special knife, a ceremonial knife, and cut them from here down and on an altar. And the altar had at its four corners these ornate chalices that they would collect the blood in. And the people in attendance would then drink the blood. There were candles and chants. And it was a ritual to bring Lucifer and demonic entities. It's almost like the terror and the energy creates a portal and it brings these entities in. And many of these people in ceremonies like this will actually bring an entity into their own body, so it takes over their human soul. And this is something that I witnessed several times. And the people in attendance are what we would call VIPs, religious heads of religious organizations, CEOs of big mega corporations, politicians, presidents, leaders of global agencies, anyone at the top of any structure on earth, whether it be medical or education or media, the so-called elites of the world, the families, these are the kinds of people that do this. I was also trafficked from the Vatican along with many other children. Sometimes it would be these very posh parties and some really beautiful mansion, and myself and other children would be brought there. We would be dressed up. And the people in attendance would select the children they wanted to take and rape and do whatever they wanted to do with. Sometimes it was in outdoor areas. So the children would be either dressed in outfits or we would be stripped naked and have to run and hide in the woods or among the trees. And then we would be hunted. And then when you're found, you're raped. And at the end of the evening, a child was usually sacrificed at the very end in the manner I described. The other thing that I was put through is an Italian family lineage. My uncle directed an underground facility where they did experiments and torture. I was taken there a lot and put through torture, which would be things like electric shock, being buried alive with dead bodies, waterboarding, beatings, watching people and animals be brutalized and killed, being forced to make impossible choices, being locked up for days in a cage with no food and water, being put in a freezer, having people defecate on me, or having animals or people be disemboweled and putting all that on top of me. It's really horrific, but this is the kinds of things that they did there. And the trafficking sometimes was not from the Vatican, but just among European elite. When you say Italy has a mafia and they have a government, none of those things are separate, or the Vatican. Like, there's a power structure. And while they may look different to the public, they all work together behind the scenes. Unfortunately, I grew up the first 18 years of my life being put through these kinds of things. The last thing I'll say is I was impregnated a few times as a teenager because of the trafficking. And this is something they do. They would wait till I was almost at term and then do a forced abortion and kill the infant in front of me. I've been through some pretty dark and unimaginable things. That's a little synopsis for you.
Max, I'm sure the audience is wondering, what was going on with your family that this happened to you as a child? Can you give us that background?
A lot of the times, people like myself that get put through these things, it comes from a family lineage. In my case, it was an Italian family lineage. This is generational. My mother was very dissociated. She had different personalities and was not able to be a functional person. She couldn't protect me because she was a victim of this herself. And in fact, she was used in a lot of the tortures with me. They make a point of breaking attachment between a mother and the baby. So when I was very young, they started rituals to destroy that attachment with my mother.
What would be the point of that? So you are attached to them as the captors?
Yes. And also because these people know psychology.
Yeah.
They understand that the single most protective thing we as humans can have is love and a loving family. If you look outside today, you can see attempts to break up the family, to destroy it. And I would say you can look in the culture and see how they want to break attachment in the collective as well. Birth in a hospital. A baby gets taken and put in that room with all the babies in the bassinet. That's not natural. You're supposed to be on the mother's body. Even babies in a crib, in a separate room by themselves, the psychology says you're supposed to cry it out. That's exactly the opposite. Infants need us to attend to them every time they need it. And that's how they develop independence and security internally, and then go on to be a cohesive, whole human being. The feminist movement, which may have started with good intent, but they co-opt every movement. And this pumping out that it's somehow not good to be a mother, it's like a lesser role. No, children need at least one parent to be with them. Back in the 40s and 50s, a man could make enough income to support a wife and children and buy a home. And they deliberately destroyed that economic condition so that both parents have to go to work, so that children go into state care at earlier and earlier ages. And then children are sent to these indoctrination centers we call public schools. It's all a big plan to separate us. If you look at all mammals in nature, what happens when a mother mammal has babies, they're on her body. They're with her until they're at a point that they can go off on their own. But that's been deliberately messed with. So it's not just that attachment. It was broken in my case in a very deliberate, ritualistic way. But I would say that everything they did to me, I can take a parallel. They do this to all of us in some form. To break attachment is to create human beings that are traumatized, that are fragmented, that can be easily mind controlled and manipulated towards their agenda.
Make it so you're reliant on them rather than yourself and your tribe.
Yes.
You look to them for guidance, like the mother-father archetype. I don't have the intelligence or the knowledge to make a decision what's best for me. I have to ask an expert, not to mention financially dependent and all that. This is mind-blowing. What strikes me the most, Max, is how did you overcome this? How did you not identify as the victim? I just can't believe the horror. I've heard you say you've been buried alive, that you said about being thrown in the freezer and all these absolutely horrific things that happen to you that are beyond belief for the rest of us. I just trying to wrap my brain around how did you not only overcome it, but you are a fully functioning and contributory member of society. I just don't understand that. How do you explain that?
One thing I want to say is when I was very young, they told me they do this to their own children because they groom children for future roles. Anyone who's in a high level of power will have come from this background and be groomed into a role that they want. They told me early on that they were going to make me like them. That was a mistake because it stuck in my mind, and I vowed if there's anything I do, I will never allow that to happen. So it gave me this strong flame internally, which is like, no, you will never make me evil. I will not succumb. So it gave me a certain strength. The other thing I'll say is when I came into this life, and I believe most children are this way, I was very connected to spirit. The person that was with me all the time was Jesus. And I'm not religious, but that was the person that was with me. We are multidimensional beings. One of the tricks they've done on us is to separate us and make us believe there's only a material, physical reality. They have done everything to disabuse us of the fact that we have multidimensional selves and are connected to spirit. So it was that connection of mine that sustained me. And I had memory of pre-incarnating into this life. I remembered being in some big sort of galactic meeting and talking about Earth and what was going on here. There has been a war between good and evil here, a spiritual war for a long time. And so I believe I volunteered to come here, and so did many others along with me. Right now is this transition point when we're actually going from a dark age to a light age. We have an opportunity. There's like a wave in our favor, right? Which is why it's so important what you're doing and what I do to wake people up so we can step into our power and be part of this change. So I knew I'd come here on a mission and that I was to survive. When I was 5 years old, living in Lesotho, Africa, I was lying outside in the evening looking at the sky, and the stars were out. I had this vision of all these stars falling down to the earth. And this voice said, a bunch of you came here. Stay alive because later you'll find the others like you. And you're here to make a difference. Things like that stuck in me. And when I wanted to give up, I didn't. I just kept going. I did die several times during the various tortures, what they call a near-death experience. And I left my body. And I was at that moment with Jesus, and I could see everything. And when you're not in the body, you have a very different perspective. And so I would always opt to come back into my body because I could see each and every single one of us is precious and makes a difference by being here. We have been taught to feel so helpless and like, oh, there's nothing I can do. No, your very existence, the light in you, is significant. It tilts things to a certain, instead of tilting it to the dark, it tilts it to the light. So I would say those are the things that enabled me to keep going and to survive. I possess an incredible strength to be able to endure that and keep my heart open and want to work for the light. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. It's just incredible. I too had a very strong connection as a child. I have vivid memories, a few in particular, of being in a field. I've always been a nature girl and loved animals. I was very independent as a kid. Even when my mom would take me with her and like she would play tennis with some friends and all that. And the other kids would be in the daycare and I'd be up by myself playing with my blocks or whatever. She could see me through the window of the tennis court and I'd be sitting in the lunch area. Her friends would say, how is your daughter not running around crazy? Or aren't you afraid she's going to get into trouble or whatever? Like be a kid, right? She was like, no, she's just very independent. I was very content. But I remember many times talking to God, like a 2-3-year-old talking in my own language. I knew what I was saying, right? And feeling very connected. It's probably quite common that a lot of people, if they really got in touch, had that at some point. I love that a lot of your work is talking about this whole plan of the deep state is to completely like dismantle that and how it's pervasive across industries. And there's so many things going on that funnel down to that basic goal that it's just remarkable. I'd love to know what you think the specific purpose of these satanic rituals. You mentioned at the Vatican down below and the sacrifice of the children and the drinking the blood, because there's something about the chemistry of blood when it has cortisol and adrenaline running through it. From what I understand, it can give supernatural powers to humans. I would love to hear from you and your expertise. Like, other than some sick, sadistic thrill, what is the purpose of all these sacrifices and torture?
Yeah. These people, they're Satanists, psychopaths, and pedophiles. They're anti-life, anti-God. The story of Lucifer sort of says it. He wanted to be God in his own right. They, being an inversion of life, use our life force energy to create whatever they want to create in this reality. And they have so far used our life force energy to create a hell on earth. And they've done that with mind control and deception and poisoning us and all of the things that they have created, such as war is absolutely unnecessary. They fund both sides of war, right? They create poverty. There's no such thing really in this reality. So they set it all up so that they use us and our energy, because it's kind of like if we're the sun, we have our own light and our own energy. They're the moon. So they have the light, but it's the reflection of our light. It's parasitic.
Like
These people are parasitic. They need us and they use us. What they want seems so ridiculous to us, but they don't have that connection to spirit. What they want is worldly power, wealth, and fame. They literally want to be the rulers of this planet. In other words, a god to us. They want to be in that role. And pedophilia undergirds their entire control structure. For one, it's a blackmail thing. If you rise the ranks in any societal industry, at some point, you come to their attention to go higher. For example, you would have to go through a ritual where you would rape and possibly murder a child. Then they have this blackmail on you. They control everyone through pedophilia, number one. Number two, they use children. Think of the kids in China and Russia, the communist countries, when they would train children really hard to be superstar Olympic athletes. They would start when they were 2, and they were much better. They could do so much. Well, the human being, if it doesn't kill you, you can take children and make them into anything you want. So they make assassins, soldiers, honeypots. They use children for a lot of their purposes. And if they take children and do this to them, they can control them as adults. In some cases, put them in certain global roles. That's their puppet, right? Another factor is if you hate the true God, if you're going to go against that, what is the number one thing closest to God, an innocent child, the baby coming into this reality? So it's a big middle finger to God to viciously, barbarically attack and assault a baby and a child. So there's that component to it too. So it's multi-layered.
I see. So the innocence. Okay.
Yes.
So it's almost symbolic, not just chemical or biochemical going after that adrenochrome. You mentioned the pedophilia. It's just truly remarkable when you really uncover what's going on in Hollywood and all these very famous actors and actresses and politicians and all this that are involved. If I share it with people in my life, I get two reactions. The main two are complete disbelief. Like, this is ridiculous. Why are you sending me this? Why are you talking? How do you even believe this is true? Like, it's so crazy to people. They just think that this is absolutely nuts and that it just wouldn't be allowed. And then I have a few select people in my world that are completely like, yep. And I have one that's very close to me that has been saying this for a very long time. Everybody thought he was crazy. But now I'm like, looks like you were right about everything coming out. I even told him, I'm like, you're not going to believe who I'm talking to. Because again, it's like governmental spouses that are actually men that are transgender. Unbelievable. Pedophilia of major actors and actresses. Child trafficking and torture going on below the Vatican. Like, what? Deep underground military bases, DUMBs. That movie, Underground Railroad, was a big awakening for a lot of people that came out about a year ago. But then again, a lot of people just don't even believe it's true. They think it's all fabricated or all smoke and mirrors or all video, like, scrolling around the video, you can make anybody look like a man by, whatever, those filters and all that stuff. But I just have to ask you, and you have to forgive me if I already kind of asked you this, but I just would love to know what to say to these people that kind of poo-poo it. And then the other person is those that it's too uncomfortable. They don't want to hear it. Like, I can't, this is too much for me. I can't go there. You might be right, Amy, but please don't tell me about that. So I got those two. What do we say to those people?
So to the latter, to the ones who say, and I get it, I have compassion for that. It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
I would say it's not very much different as if you were walking down the street and you saw a man raping a little girl and you said, I can't deal with that. Okay. When you can't deal with it, you are in fact not doing your part to stop it. Hence, you're participating in allowing it to continue. I hate to be that harsh, but there it is, right?
I agree.
The people that think, oh, this can't possibly happen. One is, it's very classic that if one has been abused, if I had been sexually abused, but I had not ever remembered that or dealt with it, then if anyone around me presents to me that they'd been sexually abused, I can't believe it because it would then mean that I would have to acknowledge that happened to me. And there's a big denial there, right? It's too scary to even acknowledge because it triggers something in the people. The other half of that is they're not like us. So what confuses people is they think, well, no one could do that. Yeah, no one human could do that. Exactly. We have this thing called compassion and empathy. We literally, when you watch a movie and you see a sad scene, you cry. We mirror each other. We feel each other. That's normal. But they don't. They are not fully human anymore. Whether it's from the torture they've endured or because they've invited entities into their soul or whatever it is, these people are not like us. And they actually don't feel anything when they torture. In fact, they enjoy torturing and murdering children. I don't want to traumatize you, but in one of these parties that I was taken to, I witnessed them. They were laughing and drinking, and somebody had a big, huge sword. And they took two babies and impaled them on the sword and then swung it around, whooping and hollering. They are having fun. They enjoy this. And we can't understand it because when we hurt somebody else, it hurts us. Although they've done in our society a lot to try and separate us from that natural compassion. You can see today people will step over. Yeah, the desensitization, right? It shouldn't happen. In a natural reality, it's not even possible, but yet that's not the reality we're in. And these people are not like us. So yes, they are doing this. I have compassion for the fact that people don't know how to believe it or don't want to hear it because it's very, very painful. But keep in mind that 8 million children a year go missing. They're being trafficked, when they're being hurt. If you don't think that it's your problem, then you're part of the problem, because children are our foremost natural resource. It's the future of the human race. And we're all responsible for children. You cannot turn away. You cannot turn away from this.
Please bring it on, Max. I am right with you on that. That's the warrior in me. My blood, like, I feel like I'm sweating right now. My blood pressure goes right up, like protecting the innocent. A big part of my mission and why I work so hard is trying to protect nature, even things like EMFs and the radiation screwing up the migration of birds and bees. This is happening to them. And there's just so many examples of things that are happening to us that we are not aware of to give our informed consent. If we were aware, we would be like, hell no. I definitely want to circle back to how you got out of it, because you can't leave the show without telling people how you broke free. So please don't let me forget. But this is one of the most important things I need you to share with the audience today. And you just started talking about it. This universal law of required consent. Okay, by not saying no to things like your example of if you saw a child being raped, would you just walk by or would you do something about it? But by not saying no, by looking the other way, by saying it's too uncomfortable to listen to, look at, talk about, too unbelievably horrible to believe can be true. But by not speaking out, we're implying consent, which enables them to continue. So this is key, everybody. Please explain this universal law of required consent.
There is a universal law which requires them to tell us what they're going to do and for us to consent or not consent. Now, they've distorted that in such a way. So they, for example, show us a lot about their agenda in movies.
Yep.
But we're tricked into thinking it's just entertainment. No, it's kind of sneaky, but they're telling us if we don't say no and if we comply, then we're actually saying, yes, we agree with your agenda, and they can continue to do it. So, for example, back in 2019, all this stuff happened and they told people they couldn't go to work and they had to shut down and take an experimental drug into their bodies and cover their faces and all this other stuff. Well, I'll tell you, if people had said no, that would have been the end of it. It's the compliance and the consent that created the horrific last few years that now people are looking back and going, oh my God, this destroyed the global economy. This destroyed relationships. This destroyed physical health by those who took that thing. So look, they're going to be the psychopaths that they are and do the psychopathic stuff that they're going to do. There's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do something about is us. So the only reason this agenda has advanced as far as it has, I hate to say, is because we've allowed it to. Okay? So how do we stop this? We say no. We rise up en masse and say no to any of the things that are inhuman that are being done. People need to stop complying. I mean, it's just that simple. One of my favorite movies is The Matrix because it speaks to this a lot. Morpheus says to Neo that they're using us as batteries, and they are, you know? So what if we don't give them our life force energy? And what if we put that towards creating a new world that works for all of life, right? For example, have you seen the Grammys and the Emmys and the Eurovision and the music videos and the football halftime shows? They're dressed in horns and red, they're gyrating, They're drinking blood, they're eating hearts. It's in our face, okay? The pedophile agenda is in our face. In school, they're teaching children they can be this gender, that gender, no gender. The books are depicting sex acts for kindergartners, masturbation, all of this stuff. The age of consent is being lowered all over the world. There's now people calling themselves minor attracted persons. They're trying to normalize pedophilia. It's right in our face, okay? So if you're a teacher, You cannot consent to this by saying, I'm not going to teach this. Leave, quit, go start a homeschooling co-op, get together with other teachers, do something else. If you're a parent, please take your children out of these places. Parents are lobbying and trying to get these things changed, and that's great. But the system is all controlled. The judiciary at the top levels is satanically controlled. They're going to do what they want to do. So pull your children out. Educate them in a different way. These horrible places called public schools, like you said earlier, they teach us to be authority-obeying zombies anyway, right? So if you let your kid go to school and your kid is being fed that curriculum, that's sexual abuse right there. So take your kids out of the school. If you're in some kind of law enforcement, don't enforce inhuman laws against your fellow humans. And everyone's like, it's my job, it's my paycheck. Well, the Nazis said I was just following orders.
That's right.
So we have to live morally with integrity. We have to do the right thing. It doesn't matter what the consequence, because if we all did that, then this would change very, very quickly. So the key element here is us. What are we going to do? Because we have the power. Because we are billions and they are very few. Because we are spiritually connected and they are not. Because this is our planet. So they have successfully over decades socially engineered us to be so compliant and scared and dumbed down and of low consciousness. And, you know, they poison us, they chemtrail the skies, they poison the food, the water. The medicine is all toxic. It was designed to be that way, actually, by Rockefeller back when he started allopathic medicine. The EMF frequencies that gird the planet. I mean, you name it, they've come at us, the miseducation, the media, they've come at us in all these different ways. And to a great degree, we see the result today when you look out into the masses. This has really done some damage. But there's many of us, you and I and others, who are actually speaking out and trying to wake people up and help people heal themselves and step into their power, because the solution is us. First, you have to do yourself. You have to put yourself back together. Then you have to join with other humans because they divide and conquer us in every way, right? And then as a collective humanity, we have to reconnect with spirit. And once we connect within ourselves, with each other and with spirit, we're way more powerful than them. Why have they done so much effort, so many resources to do this to us? That tells me because they're scared, because we actually are that powerful. So they keep having to do this to keep us down, but we don't have to stay there.
Can you speak to Loosh so people understand what that's about?
These creatures live in a certain frequency bandwidth, survival, fear, hate, anger, guilt, shame, impotence, helplessness, despair. Etherically, these entities that are not in a body feed off our human emotions. And what's food to them is anything in that frequency bandwidth. So, of course, they do everything to keep us constantly in fear, to keep us down, to keep us hopeless and helpless, because that nourishes them and that's food. And on a physical level, they keep us there so that we don't take action and stop it, right? If you live in a frequency of love and helping others and joy and peace and abundance, then you're actually out of their reach because they live here and we have to get as humanity here. And then they can't even touch us anymore. They need us at their level to parasite off us, right? So if we get ourselves to that higher level, we're no longer food for them, whether physically or etherically.
Fantastic. Now let's circle back to how you got out of it, Max. How in God's name did you rescue yourself from this living hell?
I first have to attribute it to spirit, to God. But to simplify it, at one moment, I had had enough. And I said no more. I stepped into my power somehow. The spirit filled me and it just came out of my mouth. They were doing a ritual. They love to do these Jesus rituals and everything. And I just drew a line and I said, no more. You will not do this to me one more second. I'm done. And there was some power that filled me up. And, it's more complicated than that, but that's basically the simple answer. I said no. And
They just stopped? Weren't they probably restraining you, or they drugged you? They stopped?
I graduated high school in Rome. And because my father's American, it was always sort of set up that I would come to university here. At that time, I decided I was going to do it. I became very angry, and something came out of me where they understood, my uncle understood, I was stepping into my power, and I was like, I'm done. Did they try and mess with me later? I left, I came to the US, but I decided that I was no longer going to be a victim. I was just going to pull myself out of it. I did my healing work. I did all kinds of things because I think God's plan was for me to survive this and heal. I had a lot of spiritual assistance, but I really want to emphasize the saying no, because that's the solution for all of us. When we're done, are we done with this hell on earth reality? It takes a lot of effort, a lot of courage, a lot of willpower, but we all have at some point to make a decision. I made the decision that I wasn't going to do that another minute. I was out. They did a lot of mind control, what you would call MK Ultra, a lot of torture. They were trying to groom me for certain roles, but it failed. It didn't work. So at some point, they just had to give up and hope they had damaged me so much that I would never recover. They have technologies beyond what we're told, and they know who comes into this planet and who's a light and who might be here to affect change. So they also go after people, anyone that rises to a certain, they knew at some point they couldn't do that with me. It had failed. All the programming, I'd been able to not succumb. In a sense, they also just let me go and thought, well, she's so traumatized and so destroyed that she'll just probably end up self-sabotaging or being in a corner rocking and sucking her thumb. That's what they counted on. When I went to therapy and started to tell my story, what came out was a suicide program they had embedded in me that told me if I ever told, I would have to kill myself. They put in safeguards, programs that you don't really know are there till they open up because there's a situation that opens them up. But I was able to overcome that as well.
Really? So it's like an implanted trigger device that will automatically kick in that you're not even consciously aware of.
Yes. And so I remember the memories, a lot of them I had repressed. And when they would come out like nightmares or during the day, I would tell my therapist, I had this strong impulse that I would actually drive to the train station, go to the platform, and would be like, jump, jump. I would just stand there and not jump, but the trains would keep going by and I would pull myself back, get in my car and go back home. But see, my soul arranged it in such a way that when I did that work, I had a daughter who was 4 years old when my work began. And I was not going to leave her in this world alone. And I was not going to do that to her. I believe that situation was set up so that I would have the strength to stay alive. When these things were coming up, you just want to kill yourself because it's so horrific. I survived it once and I had to compartmentalize and repress it. But when it comes back, you feel all that pain. You feel that terror. When I was doing the work, I sweat so much that after my therapy, I had to throw out my mattress. It was brutal. When you go through that, you kind of don't want to live anymore. But I overcame that and I don't have that anymore. I've been able to break that program. We're all programmed from birth in this world. But guess what? You become conscious of the program, you can break it. You can say no. You can take it apart and overcome it.
It's like you take your soul back. So how do you make meaning of all this, Max? Do you ever struggle with why did this happen to me? What is the purpose of this? If there's one divine creator, why would this even be allowed? And what's the meaning behind it? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think it's the creator that allows this. There's no such thing as darkness. It's an absence of light.
Okay.
There's no such thing as cold. It's an absence of heat. It's the absence of the divine that has allowed this to occur. It's the fact that some people took control of this planet and took it into a very dark place. I know that I chose to incarnate here. It's not that I chose to come and suffer and be tortured. It's more like when someone volunteers to go into the military. They're not going, well, I want to be hurt and tortured. They're serving. They're doing it for a bigger cause.
Yeah.
So my soul wanted to come here for that bigger cause. If you're going to be an elite warrior who drops into the thick of a war, it makes sense that I would go into the darkest places on earth to feel it out, to see what's going on, right? To gather the situation, the intel, for lack of better metaphor. I think I wanted to go through the experience. I knew I had enough faith in myself and my connection to spirit that I would come out of it. I mean, it's been brutal. Sometimes I tell myself, what was I thinking? This better be the last lifetime because I don't want to do this again. But on the other hand, here I am telling the story of my life and waking people up to what's going on, to the reality that we live in. So I feel like I chose to come into this life to help stop this from occurring on earth, to speak for the innocents, the children, right? So that's a convoluted way of answering, but I think that's really where it comes around. After everything they did to me, I'm not going to let them win. By staying small, the first times I spoke out, I had to change all my clothes after I was sweating so much. I was so scared when I was speaking out. I was so uncomfortable being on camera, right? But I kept pushing through. It's much easier. I'm not going to let them win. If I went through all of that, I'm going to use the rest of my life to do everything in my power to expose this so that we can end these satanic practices and transition our planet into the heaven on earth it was meant to be.
Are you finding a lot of people are also coming out, a lot of survivors?
It's still astonishing to me. When I went through it and was in my recovery, I didn't know anybody else had been through this. I knew what happened, but I didn't have the external context of it, right? And now the information is out there. Like you said, child trafficking is being exposed. People are talking about the deep state. I mean, wow. In my lifetime, this is becoming common knowledge. It's so exciting to me. People are talking about all kinds of things that I knew, but I felt very isolated and alone, but I don't anymore. A lot of survivors are coming out and telling their stories. There was a documentary called 50 Voices. It's 50voices.org. And I'm featured in there. They're 15-minute clips of 50 or possibly now more survivors. If you listen to those testimonies, you'll see people from all over the world who don't know each other, and you see the commonalities. That many people can't tell the same story. That's impossible. So yes, it's very heartening that people are speaking out and regular people are waking up and seeing what's going on here, because that means we're getting close to the point where we no longer consent to this reality and we change it.
But what's amazing to me is that they let you guys live to tell the story and aren't censoring you like so many other people that are telling the truth. They just get wiped out. Your YouTube channel got wiped out. Do you have an explanation for that? How are they letting you speak about it?
Because at this point, they don't get to let me.
They can remove your website like they did to Mercola.
Maybe
your
those
podcast. They could just, not censor you. You'll always talk. I know you will. But what I meant was in your communication with the public, they can erase your channels.
When I got a certain amount of viewers on YouTube, they canceled me. Maybe I'm just beginning to be a threat because of numbers. I just started doing this 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Could they? Sure. But also keep in mind, a lot has already changed. People talk about the plan, digital currency, social credit, vaccine passports, all of that. But even with that whole thing they didn't succeed, did they? So I say if they were able to execute that and finalize that plan, they would have already done it. So I think something is breaking down. This system is breaking down. The narrative is breaking down. Their control is breaking down. So I think there's ways that they are no longer able to do the things that they intended to do. And again, it's all energy and it's all consent and it's all awakening. Why have they done so much to keep people's consciousness reduced? Because it's precisely us awakening and seeing. If you strike a match in a dark room, what happens, right? So later. I think it's too late for them. I think they see the writing on the wall. That's why they're going all out as much as they can. But they're losing the plot. Is it maybe that I'm not known enough yet? Is it that in combination they're failing? They're trying to stopgap all these holes and the water is just coming from everywhere and they're drowning. Maybe they're going after more important things right now, but I think it's a confluence of events. Could I get shut down? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But what if God is on our side? And what if we're divinely supported and protected? Because I think we are. If you live with morality and integrity and you're fulfilling your divine mission, maybe there's some protection that we have, right? That we're sheltered from certain things because we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
2 final questions. I've heard you say that after healing, you get to keep the gifts. What gifts do you think you now have as a result of what happened to you?
One is strength. It's like I went through black belt martial arts training and I now have a black belt. What doesn't kill you does make you stronger. So everything they tried and failed at, I now have a much higher level of strength than I did before. Discernment of the truth. I never fell for a lot of the things that people fell for. When 9/11 happened, I said, oh, that's an inside job. That's them. When this last thing a few years ago happened, I don't want to say it in case you might get censored. I knew it. The minute I heard it, I'm like, oh, there they go again. So the gift is that I've always been more awake and aware because I grew up around these psychopaths. So I saw, right? So I think that's a gift. I was not as naive and easily manipulated. I'm motivated to make a difference and do something because I can't bear that anyone is living in this hell in any way at all. Like I went through this and I cannot stand, especially children who are still being trafficked. It gives me motivation, a fire under me. You know what? If they kill me, my mouth will finish talking until I drop to the ground. My life is important, but that's not what's most important. In the bigger picture, we're spiritual beings here having an experience. What are we going to do? Are we going to be cowards and sit in a corner, or are we going to step out and use whatever parts of ourselves we have? And I think that's the big call to action right now. So it's motivated me. I don't want them to win.
Last question. Any actionable steps we can take to step into our power? You mentioned about taking the kids out of public school and finding a co-op. There's a lot of talk in my circles about creating alternative communities and alternative monetary systems and, be a little more independent, self-sufficient. I'm installing some fruit trees on my property today and I'm starting to learn how to garden and, chickens to get eggs. So what are your thoughts as a final question is what people can actually do? Max, speak to the mom right now listening maybe, or the young woman who's got a very demanding job, working 9-10 hours a day, trying to pay her bills, still with us at this point in the show at the end. But it's like, oh my God, like I got to pay bills. I can't, or the mother saying, I can't take my kid out of school. I can't homeschool. I have a job. It's so big. How do I pull out of the system, but keep a life? Any practical tips or direction for those people?
Yeah. I think number one is a lot of people say, I don't know what to do. I know things are really bad out there. Start with yourself. Okay. Do your inner work, heal yourself, because we're all traumatized in this society. And when you're traumatized, we're fragmented. And when you're fragmented, you're easily mind controlled and manipulated. So heal yourself. When you do that, you step into your power, you find your own gifts. Then we're a social species. They've tried to divide us and isolate us. Get together with other human beings that think like you do and begin to brainstorm and create solutions. So the mother who has to work and, oh my God, I can't homeschool my kid. What if you get together with a bunch of other mothers and you share resources? Some mothers stay and do the teaching. You contribute in this other way. Maybe you buy the books or whatever. Get yourself together and then get together with other humans. We're so creative. We can find solutions and answers to anything if we do it as a tribe, as a collective. So get into groups in your community and begin to figure out what you can do. We cannot change their system. They have it from the top down. They control the law, the judiciary, the medicine, the education, the media, all of it. But we don't have to live within that system, and it's scary. Figure out a way to create a different system. The global food supply has been under their control deliberately because they're trying to create famine so that they can force us into their agenda and kill a bunch of us in the process. Corporate food is toxic anyway. The whole shipping food from here to that doesn't even make any sense.
GMOs.
So, yeah, GMOs, all of it.
It's not even real food.
It's not even real. It's making you sick and dumb anyway. So it's actually kind of, might as well seize the opportunity. You can grow food in a pot on a balcony. You can change your grass in your lawn to food. You can do community gardens, find the few farmers that are still there and give them money. Go as a community. How can we support you so you can grow food for us? What can we do with schooling? Take your kids out of these places and get together with teachers and other parents. Figure out a way that the teacher can get paid. You can pool resources. And even if it's like, okay, I grow food, I can give you a basket of food every week in exchange for helping homeschool my child or whatever it is. I work at a job for now. I'll contribute financially. If you get together, you can do these kinds of things. The best thing we're going to do for our health is eat properly, good nutrition, drink clean water, stop using anything that has fluoride in it. Herbs are healing. So to all the healers out there, there's many talented people who know all kinds of real healing modalities. Get together and form a local clinic. If you have to barter. There was a time, it's pretty recent, that grocery stores exist. Before that, people always used to grow their own food, right? This earth is abundant and full of resources.
Look at the victory gardens after the war. People had gardens in their homes, and it was very common. And then when all the soldiers were in war, the women were the ones that became gardeners, kept the economy going, and were growing the food. It was very common for people to have chickens. And I mean, people just have to do a little looking back in history and what actually was happening and how, as you said, this whole thing's been engineered to take that all away from us. Now, of course, they're blowing up factories and plants and trying to make it illegal to grow your own food. And they're blaming global warming on cow farts, which is absolutely insane. And of
there's
course,
no such thing as global warming. It's a program. It's another program, So don't control your mind. Don't obey these things. If you're someone doing the dirty work, but human beings, they can say to human beings, do this, do that, but it's the humans that are executing it. Stop. Stand up. Get a backbone. Stop enforcing laws that are anti-human. Stop working for the elites. Work for humanity. Grow some morality. Say no. And get creative. We don't need their system. We can create a whole different system. And that's what we have to do. You've got to do yourself and then come together with other people. We have to remember who we really are. Those are some ideas, and I'm sure there's many more. Generally, we have created everything that is through intent, but we can create it through spirit and God's intent more easily. If you choose what's right and moral over what's wrong, the universe brings you more. Like attracts like. So we're actually manifestors. We've been disabused of any power that we have. But if we step into that power, we can, and it's a mentality. They can't stop us unless we agree. To be a victim, you need a perpetrator. What if we're not victims? What if we do the work inside of ourselves and rise to a frequency where we can't be parasited on anymore? That's the big secret they don't want us to know. without manipulating and mind controlling us. If we don't comply, if we step out and create ours, they're done. They're already done. Just jump on that wave and surf it instead of getting tumbled under it, because we have the light on our side. Everything is favoring us doing this, but no one is going to come and save us. No ETs are coming, no ex-politicians, nobody but us can be our saviors. And that's, I think, the lesson that we need to learn. And the sooner we learn it, the sooner we can turn this around.
Like the Hopi said, we are the ones we've been waiting for. This might possibly be one of the most important shows I've ever done. I'm really hoping everyone listening and watching will take this to heart and share it to get the word out, wake us up, because we all need to do this together. Max, how can people find you? Where would you like to direct the audience to learn more? Where can they go to be supported? If someone listening is also a survivor or knows someone they suspect might have gone through some things, or where would you like to send us?
My website is unbroken.global, and I have over 100 interviews. I have interviewed other survivors, people that are truth warriors, healers, teachers. So there's a lot of resources if you want to learn the truth, if you want solutions. Just watch my interviews. They're free on the website. If you want to support me, I do have a membership option for very little a month. You can become an unbroken warrior. We just started this a few months ago, and we already have this incredible community. We meet on Zoom once a month. This is what we all need to do, become a community. We talk about things, and it's such a relief for people who are awake to be around other people who are awake. What can we do? If you want to join and become a member, you can do that under the member tab on my website. I do have a services tab, and I provide counseling and what I call ascension coaching, which is just sometimes when people wake up, it's really stressful. So just someone to talk to kind of help through that process. I am in the works of creating a class on trauma, what it is, and what tools for people to understand. We're all traumatized. So what is trauma and how can we recover for it? So you can stay tuned for that. And I'm in the works of writing a book, and I have a dream of creating a trauma recovery center on some land. Rescued kids who are rescued from trafficking can go. If you want to invest in something good, that's something that I'm working on as well. You can find me at unbroken.global. I'm on Instagram, BitChute, Brighteon, and Rumble. And I'm just now setting up a Substack because I like to write. So I write a lot of articles about this too. So that's me, and that's where you can find me.
We'll have that in the show notes, everybody. Thank you again so much. Thank you for being a warrior of light, love, and courage, a wonderful role model for all of us to have the courage to speak truth, stand up, say no, and say yes, and follow the moral compass, bringing the light to the room rather than curse the darkness. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for being part of the solution and creating this beautiful new world together. We'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.